Her exit story, Jade's escape. Let me tell you a story. Hi, I'm Aria Nova. Trigger warning, this episode contains emotional discussion of psychological abuse, trauma bonding, and coercive control. If these topics are sensitive for you, please take care while listening. You are not alone. There is help. There is healing. And this space is for you. Let me tell you a story. It's not mine, but it could have been. That's how familiar it feels. That's how many women have lived it in silence. That's how many still are. Her name is Jade. She didn't grow up dreaming about survival. She dreamed about stories, about becoming a writer, about falling in love with someone who saw her, really saw her, someone who'd protect her, cherish her, build something sacred together. She never imagined she'd have to make an exit plan. Never thought she'd one day stare into a mirror and whisper, "Where did I go?" But that's exactly where she found herself. And that is where this story begins.
Jade was the kind of woman people called sweet, quiet, polite, empathetic to a fault. The kind of woman who said sorry when someone else bumped into her. The kind of woman who kept the peace even when it was killing her. She learned young how to make herself small. When her father got angry, and he got angry often, her mother would just whisper, "Don't poke the bear." So Jade learned to tiptoe, to nod, to avoid eye contact. She became the master of keeping calm in rooms that pulsed with rage. She never called it abuse. No one in her family did. They called it stress, or just how he is. But that stress felt like walking on glass, and every day, Jade taught herself how not to bleed. So by the time Marcus walked into her life, she was already primed to survive him. They met in a bookstore. Jade worked there part-time after college, tucking poetry books into the shelves and dreaming of writing one herself someday. Marcus came in asking for a title he already owned. She didn't realize that until later. He was handsome in a quiet, serious kind of way, wore tailored jackets, spoke in a low, thoughtful tone. He wasn't the kind to flirt, not obviously. He observed. He asked Jade questions about her writing, her favorite authors, her dreams. He listened like she was a secret worth learning. And after the men she'd known in college, who were loud, distracted, emotionally unavailable, Marcus felt like something rare. He made her feel chosen. Here's the thing about abusers. They don't start with violence. They start with attention, consistency, romance even, the kind that feels like a movie script written just for you. Marcus started showing up weekly, then daily. Then one day, with coffee in hand, he said, "I could see myself falling for someone like you." Jade was hooked. They moved fast. Within 3 months, he had offered her the world. "Quit your job," he said. "Focus on your writing. Let me take care of things." He bought them a townhouse, said she didn't need to worry about money, opened accounts, but in his name. He promised security, and Jade thought, this must be what love looks like. But control often hides behind words like love and protection. At first, it felt like romance. Later, it felt like a cage. The isolation started softly. "She's kind of a bad influence, don't you think? Why do you have to see them every week? Let's just stay in tonight. I want you to myself." It didn't sound like control. It sounded like desire. It didn't feel like a red flag. It felt like being wanted. So Jade canceled plans, let texts go unanswered. Slowly, quietly, her world shrank. Her friends didn't notice. Not really. From the outside, she looked like a woman in love, settled, safe. But inside, something was shifting. This is how coercive control begins, not with a slap, but with slow erasure. Not with screams, but with silence. Not with bruises, but with doubt. Jade began second-guessing her outfits. Marcus would say things like, "That's a little much, isn't it?" Or, "Who are you trying to impress?" He didn't shout. He didn't even raise his voice. But Jade started dressing down, not out of fear, but out of exhaustion. It was easier not to argue. He commented on her weight, called her moody when she cried, told her she was dramatic, overly emotional, too much, and when she tried to defend herself, he would pause, tilt his head, and say, "You're lucky I love you. No one else would put up with this." Gaslighting is the psychological tactic of making someone question their own perception, their own sanity. It's how abusers shift the spotlight, from their behavior to your reaction. It leaves you confused, hollowed out, and ashamed for feeling anything at all. Jade stopped writing, stopped reading, even stopped decorating their home. Marcus had opinions about everything: the color of the curtains, the arrangement of books, the placement of the coffee mugs. Little things. But together, they created a life where she no longer existed. Jade wrote in her journal one night, "I feel like a ghost in my own house, like I'm haunting the woman I used to be." The journal became her only confidant. In those pages, she tracked the tension, the control, the loneliness. She wrote in code, just in case. A storm cloud drawn in the margins meant he'd been cold that day. A heart with a crack meant she'd cried again. Sometimes she'd write a single sentence over and over. "It's not me. It's not me. It's not me." I'll pause here, because this is the breath before the unraveling, the stillness before the storm. And next, I'll take you into the moment things start to break, when the first cracks begin to show, and Jade's story becomes not just a tragedy, but a reckoning. Stay with me. Let's go back. Not to the moment she left, but to the moments she didn't. There's a question I often hear after women share their stories. Why didn't she leave sooner? But maybe the better question is, why did she believe she had to stay? Jade didn't wake up one day and forget who she was. It was quieter than that, slower, more deliberate, more dangerous. When Marcus started isolating her, it wasn't with locked doors. It was with quiet suggestions, a slow withdrawal of safety, a slow erosion of her reality. And what makes that even more dangerous is this: Jade was trained for it. Long before Marcus, there was her mother's house. A house where silence was golden, and speaking up was punished with cold shoulders or sharp words. A house where emotions were too loud, needs were too much, and her feelings weren't safe. One of her earliest memories is hiding in the hallway, hearing her mother sob behind the bathroom door, and being told by her stepfather, "Don't ask questions. Be quiet. She's just tired." And Jade learned. She learned that emotions make people uncomfortable, that love means keeping secrets, that it's her job to be the peacekeeper. So years later, when Marcus said, "Why are you always so emotional?" it didn't sound like an insult. It sounded familiar. And when he added, "You know I'm the only one who could ever really handle you," she felt both shame and gratitude. That's what happens when your inner child has never known safety. You cling to the illusion of it, even if it's poison. Let me read you something she wrote in her journal. This is from a night when she sat awake on the kitchen floor after one of Marcus's silent treatments. "I feel like I've disappeared, like I'm haunting my own life. I make dinner, I smile, I tuck the kids in, but I don't think anyone would notice if I stopped speaking entirely. I think Marcus would prefer it. Maybe he already has." She was surviving, but she wasn't living. And for women like Jade, silence isn't peace, it's prison. Marcus's control was so subtle, so rehearsed, that Jade began to regulate herself. She knew the way he liked his eggs: over easy, not runny, no pepper. She made sure not to wear lipstick, because once he said, "It makes you look cheap." He didn't have to ban things outright. She'd already internalized the rules. And that's the thing about psychological abuse. You stop needing a cage when the fear lives in your body. This is what we call conditioning. You're trained, sometimes from childhood, to ignore your intuition, suppress your voice, and serve someone else's comfort at the cost of your own. Jade didn't just lose her voice. She forgot she ever had one, But something started to shift the day her cousin Tasha moved in. It wasn't planned. Tasha had just gone through a breakup and needed a place to land. She was loud, blunt, a little messy, and she saw right through Marcus. At first, Jade was terrified Marcus wouldn't let her stay long, but he was on his best behavior. For a while. Tasha didn't say anything outright. She just started noticing. The way Jade jumped when Marcus's car pulled in the driveway. The way her smile dropped the second he walked into the room. The way she apologized for things like forgetting to defrost the chicken or sneezing too loud. Tasha started asking questions, and when Jade brushed them off, she didn't push. She just stayed. She became a mirror. One Jade hadn't looked into for years, and that, my friend, was the beginning of the undoing. Jade began to write again, first in secret, then in the open. Her journal became her sanctuary, a place she could bleed onto paper without being silenced or shamed. He tells me no one else would love me like he does, but I think, maybe that's the point. Maybe I don't want to be loved like this anymore. That line, that sentence, that was the first crack in the foundation. Next came therapy, online at first, a trauma-informed specialist who spoke to her in language that made her feel seen, not judged. She started learning words like gaslighting, trauma bond, coercive control. If these words are new to you, that's okay. That's why we do this. To speak the unspeakable, to name what was once hidden. Gaslighting, when someone manipulates you into doubting your reality. Trauma bond, when your brain attaches to someone who hurts you because they also intermittently soothe you. Coercive control, a pattern of controlling behaviors, emotional, financial, psychological, used to dominate another person. These aren't just buzzwords. These are the weapons Marcus used. And Jade? She was finally learning their names. That's when the plan began to take shape. Not escape, not yet, but awareness, clarity, courage. Because leaving, it's not one decision, it's hundreds. Small, trembling steps, one foot in front of the other, even if it's just inside your own mind. And Jade was walking, quietly, secretly, but she was walking. She started texting old friends, just checking in, seeing who was safe. She opened a separate savings account using cashback cards and rebate apps. She met with a lawyer, just to gather information. She looked into shelters, Googled how to get full custody safely. Every click was a rebellion. Every plan was an act of resistance. And still, she smiled through family dinners, packed school lunches, listened to Marcus talk about work like nothing was wrong, because she had to, until the night she didn't. Jade didn't wake up one morning and suddenly realize she was being abused. That's not how it works. It's not a light switch. It's a slow flicker, a dimming of self, a quiet erosion of identity that happens so gradually you don't even notice you've disappeared. And for Jade, that process had started long before Marcus ever came into the picture. Let me tell you something she wrote in her journal. She wrote, "I didn't grow up learning to say no. I grew up learning to make things work, to smooth over conflict, to say sorry even when it wasn't my fault, because that was safer." Jade's childhood taught her that compliance was currency. Her father wasn't violent, but he was unpredictable, passive-aggressive, cold. One moment he was laughing at the dinner table, the next he was slamming the door and disappearing for days. And her mother? She stayed quiet. She called it keeping the peace. So Jade became the good girl, the helper, the emotional sponge, the one who always apologized first, even when she was the one bleeding. And when you grow up in a house like that, you learn not to trust your feelings. You learn that your needs are inconvenient. You learn to survive by becoming invisible. That's why Marcus felt familiar. Not because he was safe, but because his chaos matched the chaos she'd grown up with. You see, when a woman stays in a relationship like this, it's not because she's weak. It's because her nervous system has been wired for survival over connection. That's not her fault. That's adaptation. That's trauma. In one of her entries, Jade wrote, "I used to think if I could just be better, just love him the right way, he'd stop needing to fix me. I thought maybe I was broken. That's why he kept chipping away at me, because I wasn't enough." Let that sit for a moment. The lie that love must be earned, that you have to earn kindness, earn gentleness, earn peace. This lie lives inside a lot of us. It's planted early, watered by silence, grown in households where love was conditional and approval was rationed. So when Marcus came along, so full of attention, of certainty, of direction, she didn't see danger. She saw structure. She saw someone who said, "Let me take care of you," and her nervous system exhaled. Because finally, someone was staying. Finally, she could stop trying so hard. But control doesn't always show up with a clenched fist. Sometimes it shows up with a credit card, a compliment, a kiss on the forehead right after they've made you cry. Marcus used to call her his little porcelain doll. At first, Jade thought it was sweet. But then, it became a rule. She always had to look perfect. Hair curled, makeup flawless, clothes fitted, never frumpy. No leggings, no ponytails, not even around the house. He said it was because he was proud of her. But if she broke the unspoken code, he'd go cold. He wouldn't raise his voice. No, that would be too obvious. He'd just ignore her, look through her, sit at the table in silence, scroll his phone while she served dinner, fed the kids, cleaned up, all while pretending nothing was wrong. That's the part people don't understand. You don't need bruises to feel abused. You just need to be erased, slowly, over time. There was a moment, Jade told me about it, and it stayed with me. It was a Thursday night, late. The kids were asleep. Jade had just finished the laundry. Her hands were dry and cracked from detergent. She walked into the bedroom, and Marcus was watching a movie. She sat on the edge of the bed and said softly, "Hey, can we talk?" He didn't look at her, just muttered, "Now's not a good time." And that was it. No follow-up, no later conversation, just dismissal. And Jade, bless her heart, apologized. She said, "Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt." And she walked away feeling like she was the one who messed up. This is what psychological control looks like. It's not about yelling. It's about power. Power over time, over space, over emotion, over reality itself. And for Jade, the scariest part wasn't when Marcus got angry. It was when he was calm, cold, methodical, because that's when she knew he was punishing her. There were flashbacks that started surfacing, memories from when she was young, like the time her dad asked her why she was crying after he snapped at her, and then told her, "You're too sensitive. Grow up." Or the time her mom made her hug a family member who had said something inappropriate, because they didn't mean it. She was taught to minimize, to move on, to keep the family peace. So that's what she did with Marcus. For years. In one of her later journal entries, Jade wrote, "I can't remember the last time I laughed from my belly. I think that part of me got locked away, somewhere under the dishes and the lipstick and the fake smiles at church. This is what happens to women who stay. They don't just lose themselves. They start believing the version of them he created. And the longer they stay in that house, the harder it becomes to remember what freedom feels like." But something was changing, quietly, slowly, and that change had a name. Tasha, her cousin, the only one who saw the cracks and didn't look away. And that's where we'll pick up next. The turning point, the reckoning, the first ember of exit, because no matter how deep the fog, the fire inside you never fully goes out. You just have to find someone to help you relight it. So what does it look like when a woman begins to wake up? Not all at once, not with fireworks or a fight, just cracks, small ones, barely visible. But once they form, the light starts to leak through. For Jade, the cracks came in whispers, little questions she began to ask herself at night. Why do I feel safer when he's out of town? Why do I flinch when I hear his car in the driveway? Why do I feel lonelier with him than when I'm alone? She didn't have the answers yet. But the questions? That's where the power started to return. When you've lived in a fog long enough, even a flicker of clarity feels dangerous. You squint at it. You doubt it. You wonder if maybe you're being dramatic. Again. But Jade had Tasha, and Tasha was patient. She never pushed. She didn't say, "You need to leave." She just noticed. Noticed how Jade got quieter when Marcus entered the room. How she asked permission to do things like go to the store or take the kids to the park. Tasha started making tea at night, sitting on the couch, leaving a space next to her open. And when Jade sat down, Tasha would ask simple things like, "What do you miss about your old self?" Or, "Do you think this version of love is what you'd want for your daughter?" And one night, Jade cracked. Not loudly, not with sobs, just a single line. "I don't think I know what real love is anymore." Let me tell you something about gaslighting. It doesn't just make you question your memory. It makes you question your intuition, your gut, your soul. You stop trusting your own compass. And when that happens, you need someone outside the storm to help guide you home. Tasha became that compass. She brought books, resources, podcasts. She'd leave them casually, on the kitchen table, on Jade's nightstand. Titles like, "Why Does He Do That?" "The Body Keeps the Score," "Psychological Abuse and Coercive Control." And Jade would pick them up late at night, after the house was quiet, and read in silence until her hands trembled. Because for the first time, she saw herself in the pages. She realized she wasn't crazy. She was being conditioned. In her journal, Jade wrote, "I've been gaslit so long I don't know if my memories are mine anymore. Sometimes I wonder if I imagined the good parts just to survive the bad ones." That's what psychological abuse does. It makes you forget the sound of your own voice. The turning point came quietly. It was a Tuesday. Jade picked her daughter up from school, and her teacher stopped her in the hall. "She seemed a little upset today," the teacher said gently. "She said something about not wanting to go home." Jade froze. And that night, her daughter, just 7 years old, whispered, "Mommy, are you sad because of Daddy?" Jade told me that was the moment everything changed. Because when your child starts recognizing your suffering, it forces you to confront what you've normalized. And she knew, if she didn't break the cycle, her daughter might end up repeating it. So she made a decision, not to leave, not yet, but to prepare, to take her power back, 1 inch at a time. Leaving a covert abuser isn't just leaving a partner, it's leaving a system, a web of control, financial, emotional, legal, sometimes even spiritual. Jade began with the smallest act of rebellion. She opened a secret email account, then a private bank account at a local credit union. She asked Tasha to help her research therapists, found one who specialized in narcissistic abuse, began meeting during the school day. She started documenting everything. Phone screenshots, photos of bruises her kids got when he roughhoused too hard, voice memos of the way he'd belittle her under his breath. She started writing it all down, every insult, every cold silence, every time he made her feel like a burden, because now she had a plan, and she knew one day she'd need proof. There's a specific kind of bravery in planning your escape while smiling through dinner, while packing lunches, while getting the oil changed, while tucking your babies in at night and pretending everything is okay. Jade wasn't sleeping. She was moving through her life like a ghost, all while carrying a secret she couldn't afford to get caught with, because she knew, if Marcus found out, there would be consequences. One night, Marcus came home late. He reeked of whiskey and rage. Something was off. He didn't shout, didn't throw anything. He just stared at her, long, hollow, and said, "You've been different lately. You should watch yourself." That was all. But it was enough. Enough to know the window was closing. She had to move. Fast. So she called Tasha, gave her the green light, and together they mapped it all out. The go bag, the kids' documents, a burner phone, a backup plan in case something went wrong. They even practiced what to do if he came home early. It wasn't paranoia, it was preparation. In her final journal entry before she left, Jade wrote, "I don't know if I'm strong enough, but I know I'm not dying in this house." That line right there, that's survival. That's rebirth. And then came the day. He was out of town, a conference. The kids were at school. Jade called out of PTO, packed the essentials, left her wedding ring in the sink, and walked out the front door for the last time. No police escort, no big confrontation, just her cousin, her babies, and a promise. We are never going back. That's where we'll pause, because the escape isn't the end. It's the beginning of the real war, custody, trauma, rebuilding. But for now, I want you to breathe with her. Feel that air on her skin. The first deep breath she'd taken in years. Freedom doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like oxygen. When Jade walked out of that house on a stormy night, barefoot, carrying her baby and holding her son's hand, the world didn't stop for her. It didn't rush in to applaud her bravery or rescue her from the fire. No, the world stayed still, and that, in itself, was its own kind of violence. Because leaving was only the beginning. The truth is, when a woman escapes a covert abuser, she's not walking away from chaos into peace. She's walking into the next battlefield, one that's colder, quieter, and just as cruel. It's the one where she has to fight for her kids, her sanity, her story. And the system doesn't always fight fair. Jade found that out the next morning. She filed for a protective order. Her hands were shaking as she filled out the paperwork. The court clerk didn't make eye contact. It felt clinical, hollow, like her trauma was just another form on a clipboard. She kept thinking, what if they don't believe me? What if I don't have enough proof? Because Marcus didn't leave bruises. He left doubt, confusion, mistrust, in her, in others, in reality itself. When he got served, he flipped the narrative, claimed she was unstable, said she was manipulative, that she was keeping the kids from him. He filed a petition for joint custody within days. This is a common tactic. Abusers weaponize the family court system to continue the abuse by proxy. It's called legal abuse. They gaslight the court just like they gaslight their victims. And suddenly, Jade, the woman who did every school drop-off, every sick day, every meal, every nighttime tear wiping, was being painted as the villain. As unstable, unreliable, emotional. She told me the worst part wasn't the lies. It was the way people believed them. Her mother said, "Are you sure it was really that bad?" Her sister, "Maybe you should just try counseling first." Even her best friend asked, "Are you overreacting?" But not Tasha. Her cousin had seen it, felt it, lived in it. She stood up for Jade, showed up to hearings, wrote letters, testified in court, and slowly, someone listened. Jade documented everything: screenshots, emails, voice memos, journal entries. She wrote down what Marcus said to her, how he said it, what he did when no one was watching. And she told the court what abuse sounds like when it wears a suit, what control looks like when it smiles in public, what fear feels like when it doesn't leave bruises, but leaves you gasping anyway. After 3 long months, the judge granted her full legal custody. When Jade walked out of that courtroom, holding her kids' hands, she said it felt like the fog finally lifted. She still had trauma, triggers, scars you couldn't see. But she had her babies, and she had her voice. She told me, "It felt like I could breathe again." And here's what I want you to understand. The story didn't end in the courtroom. It kept unfolding. through the nightmares, the legal threats, the co-parenting chaos, the days when guilt wrapped around her like chains. It continued in therapy, in long walks by herself, in quiet moments where she still questioned if she did the right thing, even though she knew she had. Because healing isn't clean. It's not a straight line. It's tangled. And it's honest. Jade had to relearn how to trust herself. She had to unlearn the story she'd been told, that she was too emotional, too dramatic, too broken. She had to rebuild her self-worth from ashes. She wrote in her journal, "Every day I stay gone is another day I rescue myself again." If you're listening to this and you see yourself in Jade's story, I want you to know, you're not weak for staying. You're not foolish for loving someone who hurt you. And you're not broken for still missing them. Trauma bonds are real. They're powerful. And leaving doesn't undo them overnight. But every step you take toward yourself, every phone call, every journal entry, every dollar saved, every tear cried in private, is a step toward freedom. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need a spark of belief that your life can be different. And if that spark is all you have right now, that's enough. Let it grow. Jade's story is one of millions, and like hers, yours deserves to be heard too. You don't need permission to leave. You don't need proof to want peace. You don't need bruises to ask for help. You just need to know there is life on the other side. Thank you for being here, for listening, for holding space with me. If you or someone you know is in a relationship like this, visit herexitstory.com for resources, support, and real tools to begin your own exit. And don't forget, tune in next week for our newest episode. Until then, I'm Aria Nova. Stay safe, stay awake, stay free.